Hartlett fancying his chances from here. Gonna get some momentum and launch an almighty kick from 60 metres out. Distance is okay. Yes! What a ball! Hammer time!
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Pears on a Pod. It's episode 16, I'm pretty sure. And this week we have a very, very special guest. But before I introduce our very special guest, it's the man who Toby Thurston thought actually looked like Mickey Mouse with his new headset this week, Jack Hudson, my co-host. How are you, buddy?
Yeah, thanks for that, mate. After that sledge, I'm just like, yeah, need to invest before we go to another pod because it was on life support and it gave way last week. The sticky tape was just like dangling. It looked like shit. So, right time to improve, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely. The duct tape wasn't looking too sexy at all for a podcast. But regardless, let's get to our guest this week. Played 193 games for Port Adelaide, 77 goals. Majority of those were probably outside 80 metres. I speak of the 2014 Clio Bachelor nominee, Hamish Hartlett. Hamish, welcome to the pod.
Well, thanks, boys. Thanks for the introduction. That was, one part that you could have left out, and I would happily have let that one slide. But anyway, here we are.
That's what we do, mate. And unfortunately, we do have to start on a stitch-up, and I've been hounded by our wife about this. Hammer, when you kick balls into the crowd, like when you're doing a warm-up, do you often see where they go?
I'm probably a little bit more conscious than other blokes are. But yeah, we don't really care too much as long as they go straight.
Well, I think you might have missed this one because we were sitting on the left side behind, and one of your balls on a wet night has hit the wife straight and flushed in the head.
Any damage done or?
Well, she missed the entire first quarter getting concussion tested. So,
yeah, my apologies. Pass on my apologies to her, please.
No, will do, mate. She's just been after that for about 4 years, so she'll be ecstatic. So, appreciate that. But, mate, how's it been this year, like playing at West Adelaide and back at the club as well in the AFLW system? What has it been like for you?
Yeah, it's been an interesting transition, no doubt about that. I still very much love playing footy. It's been really good, actually, to get back to West Adelaide, where I guess the whole footballing journey sort of began to some extent for me a long time ago now. But, there's a few sort of familiar faces around there. I guess, you know, the important thing was that West Adelaide gave me an opportunity from an employment point of view as well. So I worked there part-time as the youth development manager. So I pretty much oversee all the under-13s, 14s and 15s programs, as well as our country academy as well, which has been fantastic. So that's kept me busy, I guess, from a Monday to Friday point of view. And then obviously a bit of training on top of that around at the footy club too. So I'm really grateful for that opportunity they've provided me with. As I mentioned, I still love playing and training and trying to get the best out of myself. And then I guess in more recent times, the opportunity with the AFLW stuff is presented as well, which has been fantastic. And I've absolutely loved getting back to Alberton and just being around the football club more often. We've got a fantastic group of players and coaches and staff members there in the W program, and looking forward to that season officially kicking off in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, it must be pretty exciting. What's the build-up been like for the AFLW girls? Obviously, with training ramping up over the recent weeks, have you picked out a favourite, or has anything stood out from you in the program so far?
Well, I can't be too biased, being a coach in terms of having favourites and those types of things. But I'm the backline coach. I've got a fantastic group of girls back there that they're super physical. They're very, very desperate in the way they defend, which I absolutely love. There's probably a couple that spring to mind in terms of the way they play, and they are Hannah Dunn and Indy Tahoe, both quite physical players. And probably the other one that I've really been impressed with is young Alex Ballard from, she's a young girl that we drafted from Sturt. She's got fantastic footy IQ and uses the ball really well. So we like the ball in her hands. So there's a few that stand out. But yeah, I mean, it really was quite a sort of a slapdash process, I suppose. Like the announcement about the the AFLW season starting sooner than expected probably caught a few people by surprise. So we only had about 10 weeks to try and get this new group of 30 girls together, implement some sort of game plan, get them to train together and build a bit of a culture. And before we know it, we're playing trial games and the season proper sneaks up on us. So it's been a pretty quick process, but I think we've handled it really, really well. Relatively optimistic about how the season's going to unfold as well.
Yeah, hopefully it goes better than the men's season anyway. So, but Hammer, we'll go back to the start of your days, obviously coaching now, but growing up, did you ever expect that you'd be coaching, or was it ever an aspiration of yours? Like, say, when you were getting drafted, like, did you ever think beyond that, going, I'd like to do that one day?
Oh, I think at that point in time, all you're concerned about is getting the most out of your footballing career, and that was definitely the case with me. Right up until I did my ACL in 2018, I hadn't really put a great deal of thought into what I was going to be doing next beyond my playing days. So I was sort of 27 when that occurred, and then that was really when I put my head down and my bum up and started to concern myself with what I was going to do post-playing career. Started doing some coaching courses, enrolled in uni, so I still sort of study part-time, doing a health science degree as well. So just tried to prepare myself as best as I possibly could for life after football. And as I mentioned, thankfully the opportunities, I guess, presented themselves at the end of last season. One being at West Adelaide, which is a club that I'm obviously passionate about and provided me an opportunity to get into the AFL system originally.
Well, we did talk about, Huddo just mentioned drafting. Let's take you back. 2008, pick 4. There was a whole backstory in 2007, 2016. I think you were doing South African tours with academies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Building up to the draft, did you actually think you'd be a top 5 pick?
It's a good question. I knew, so obviously I guess I'd achieved some things throughout my juniors that was always going to hold me in good stead. So at the 2016 championships for South Australia, I was awarded the Kevin Sheehan medal for the best player in the competition. And then, as you mentioned, to the AIS trip over to South Africa on the back end of that, played some state 18s footy as a bottom major and played pretty well, and then made the All-Australian team in my top age year. So I guess all stars were aligning to being a reasonably high pick. And then I guess I was playing some pretty good senior footy at West Adelaide as well as a sort of 16, 17-year-old. So, there was a fair bit of discussion around that. And then I think just prior to the draft, Port actually got in touch with me and said, look, we've got pick number 4, and if you're still there, we'll pick you up. So I guess there's some pretty reasonable signs that I was going to go pretty high there.
And what was that sort of conversation like? Like you said, it was just before the draft. Like, how quickly was it, and what other clubs sort of had you spoken to?
I had a good conversation with pretty much every single club throughout, the few months leading into the draft. I distinctly remember sitting down with Geelong and Stephen Wells, and I think they had pick maybe 7 or 8, somewhere along those lines. It might have been slightly later, but they sort of said, look, we don't think you're going to get through to our pick, but if you do, we'd love to have you, sort of thing. And then, as I mentioned, I think Port rang me maybe the day before the draft and said what they said. But even still, I was, I flew over to Melbourne for the draft. It was held at Etihad Stadium, and even still, just sitting in that room, I was still uncertain about what was going to happen until my name was called out fairly early, I guess. But I think there was Fremantle had the pick before me, so I think Jack Watts went number 1, Nick Natanui went number 2 to West Coast, and Freo had pick 3. And I think they were sort of tossing up between myself and Stephen Hill. But I guess the way the cards felt, Stephen was a local Perth boy, so they just felt it's probably the safer bet to go with him. And then me being an Adelaide boy, I was very, very fortunate to be able to stay at home.
And Choco, first coach in the AFL. What was that first conversation like for yourself with him?
Yeah, look, we'd had, I guess, a couple of conversations in the lead up, in the interview process that you have at draft camp, and I remember him and a couple other representatives from the footy club coming around to my house and having an interview at one stage. So I sort of knew what was coming with Choco in terms of him being a fantastic teacher of the game. I tried to see through a little bit of his intimidation sort of tactics, I guess, which I think he sort of liked, and we built a really good relationship in the few years that we spent together. And still now, when we bump into each other on the very rare occasion, I'm more than happy to have a good chat. So I got along really well with Choco.
A lot of players have mentioned that interview questions, they can be quite bizarre. Did you have any weird ones that were thrown your way?
No, there wasn't anything that really sprung to mind that was super curly or super weird. I remember there was a question, I think it might have been from the Hawthorn recruiting manager. It was either Hawthorn or Brizzy, and I can't recall exactly who it was, but they pretty much said if there was a football between me and one of my teammates from South Australia at the time, and it was just a purely like a one-on-one battle, like who would win it. Oh. And I think I said like the other bloke would probably win it because just because of the type of player he was. He was like a super hard contested player, and I wasn't really that at that point in time. So I was pretty open and honest about it, and I think they were a bit sort of taken aback, like are you serious? Like, what, you know what you're saying right now, sort of thing. And I was a bit like, oh. Yeah, so that's the only one I can really remember being a little bit curly, but it was probably my own wrongdoing more than anything.
They just say wheel out a big red texter. It's just
yeah.
It's like, nah. But as well, your first game as well, playing MCG against Hawthorn in the worst Guernsey the club's ever worn. Yep. What do you remember about it?
Oh, it was a pretty special memory. So obviously at the home of footy, I guess, the MCG, playing against Hawthorn, they were the reigning premiers. I remember I was doing an appearance or something at the Flinders Hospital, and I got a call from Choco, and I'd played pretty well for West Adelaide the week before. And I sort of had an idea that they were keen to get me in the team as soon as they possibly could. And I remember getting a call from Choco just saying, "Hey mate, like, just want to let you know you're playing this week." So I was so stoked, obviously, to hear that news. And then, it sort of went over to Melbourne. I had my family and a couple of my best mates with me as well, all there to sort of get involved in the festivities. And, I remember coming on sort of relatively early on in the first quarter, coming off the bench, and almost immediately, as soon as I came onto the ground, Daniel Pears kicked the footy in my direction. It was a bit of a wobbler, but I sort of gathered it pretty cleanly and sort of half evaded a tackle and gave off a handball, and that was just nice to get a good early touch. We ended up winning the game. I sort of played reasonably well and was involved in a few sort of nice collisions early on in the game as well. So, just a very fond memory, and one I've still got photos of that day and sort of reflect back on them every now and then too. So good times.
Yeah, it definitely was in that Guernsey. I will say, I don't agree with Huddo. That was a better looking Guernsey, I think. What was your thoughts on that Guernsey? Because he obviously debuted in that one. It's got to hold a close part of your heart.
It does. It holds a special place in my heart, I guess, given that it was the Guernsey that I made my debut in. But it's a pretty ugly Guernsey. I think, like everyone loves the old school Guernseys, and like I wouldn't be surprised if it made a return at some point in time.
Oh no.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, just because it's like the Freo Dockers the other week, right? When they rolled out their 3D anchor Guernsey that they used to have. It's so ugly, but everyone just loves it because it's just hideous.
Oh. There we go.
Start the campaign.
Our white Guernsey. We'll wait and see.
Yuck. And then obviously bit of injuries, bit of like all over, bit in and out of the side. What was that like, sort of overcoming?
Yeah, there were definitely some difficult periods early on in my career, and I guess so my brother Adam was at Carlton at the same time, so he was at Carlton for 5 years, only ended up playing 11 games and had a whole host of knee injuries and soft tissue injuries, and I kind of thought like, oh shit, like I don't want my career to go down that path. And there were certainly times when, I'm strained my hamstring at training, and I'd be in the change rooms icing my hamstring again, and just thinking like, far out, like it's just going to be exactly like Adam. Like, unfortunately, I'm just cursed with this body that's not capable of holding up to the rigors of AFL footy. So there were heaps of those moments early on in my career. I think in my second year of footy, I had a bad bout of glandular fever in the pre-season. So I missed like 8 weeks maybe of pre-season, and then I did a really bad hamstring at the back end of pre-season. Came back in, played maybe a couple of games early on, and then strained my quad, and then played another 2 games, and then strained my quad again, and then did it again. Just had a wretched run of injury in my first few years, up until about 2012 probably, and then I reckon 2013, 14, 15, sort of, your early mid-20s, and started getting a bit more continuity, and probably played my better footy at around those periods, which is no surprise. Like, if you take some of our young boys in the team at the moment, say Xavier and Butsy and Connor, those guys were so good in their first year when they have a full pre-season. They're playing every week, they're training every week, they're confident, and their consistency of their effort is always there. You throw a few injuries in there, especially longer term ones, and things can change pretty quickly, unfortunately, for some players, and I was one of them. There were a few of the things I had to deal with early on in my career.
Yeah, for sure. But at least, during that period of time, like 2010, 11, and going into 12, 2011, Gavin Wanganeen medalist, that would have given you some sort of confidence to build on going into 2012 and obviously further on from that.
Yeah, I think I was one of not many sort of younger players that was playing at the time, so I probably won it by default more than anything, to be honest. I don't know that I was playing outstanding footy by any stretch of the imagination, but obviously just doing better than some of the younger guys in the squad. So I'll claim it, but more so by default than anything.
As Homer Simpson says, the 2 sweetest words in the English language. Oh, bloody hell. And going under Kenny, what was it like, sort of that transition from Matty to him?
Oh, it was amazing, and the whole transformation of the football club at that point in time was something that I'm so proud to have been a part of. Obviously 2010, 11, 12 were pretty tough years, and Matty, he put his hand up for the job, had no support around him. Like, it was. He was on a hiding to nothing, really, accepting that job, and he did what he possibly could to try and help us, but really was super under-resourced, and there was no footy coming into no money coming into the footy side of the club, and it was really, really hard. So, for Kenny to come on board, but also supported by, Keith Thomas and Koshy and Darren Burgess, and then having some great assistants around him, like I think Alan Richardson at the time, and these types of guys, it makes a huge difference. And certainly there were some things that we changed around the place on field. Like, we're obviously a lot fitter than what we had been previously. Kenny came in with a new and really exciting and sort of bold and fun game plan for us to play. And it was just, I think it caught everyone by surprise to have the success that we did in 2013. Arguably could have made a prelim had we probably changed a few decisions against Geelong in that semi-final. The outcome might have been a little bit different, but to have even gotten there, it was just such an incredible ride. I remember coming back. I think we were staying maybe at the Hilton. Yeah, can't recall what hotel it was exactly, but after the game, and just the hordes of Port Adelaide supporters there that were just so pumped to see us even get that far, and we were just on cloud 9. It was just incredible, and and really the club hasn't looked back since. And I know that it's hard to satisfy Port Adelaide supporters. That's certainly been the case in recent times. But I'm pretty proud to have been a part of the transition from where we were as a football club in 2012 to 2013 and beyond.
Yeah, definitely. And you're part of the games during that year as well that just had all this belief, even being 40 points down, particularly West Coast, 41 points down halfway through the third quarter. I think you were the Peter Badco medalist that night in Anzac Ground. To come back from 41 points, like that, I think signified what 2013 was. How was that for you, that game in particular?
Again, just an unbelievable display of self-belief and confidence. And it was just, I think it stemmed on the back of the pre-season that we'd done with Darren Burgess. Like, everyone felt so fit and we knew it within ourselves. And we actually were talking about it a little bit in the media as well and in the public. And then I think other teams sort of caught onto it. Darren obviously comes with a great reputation of being a bit of a guru in the strength and conditioning space. And I think other teams might have sort of bought into it a bit as well. And then as soon as we started getting a bit of a run on late in games, we had that self-belief. Opposition may have had a bit of self-doubt about what was to come. And there were several games over that couple of year period that we came from big margins to win. And that game in particular against West Coast, 40 odd points now. I think it was Kane Corns' 250th.
I think so.
If I recall correctly. So again, a huge game for the football club in general, and for Kane, and for us to have come back from such a margin was just incredible. I remember one tactic that we changed. It was either halftime or 3/4 time. We just decided to flood sort of one side of the ground, and then Brad Ebert was told just to sprint over to the other opposite wing and just try and create some offensive ball movement going for us. And I reckon he sets up a goal from that particular tactic that we sort of implemented, and that just sort of got us going and got our belief sort of back on track. But just an amazing game.
Bloody crazy season that was. 2013 was a bunch of fun, and 2014 as well. Thought that was an incredible year. And you started the year with a bit of a different style. Your hair, you went the slick back look. run us through it, Hamish. What was going through your head with that choice?
There's been a few different hairstyles, I suppose, over time. So 2014, so I reckon I started the year with a full head of sort of long hair. And it was flopping around all over the place, and it really annoys me when it gets like that when I'm playing footy. So so I went the short through the sides and back, and just left the little bit of something on top, and I didn't mind it. I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know where I got the inspiration from. Got no idea where I must have seen it somewhere and thought, that looks all right. But I'm sure a bit further down the track that'll come back to haunt me, that sort of hairstyle. But I've got to change it up every now and then.
We may have had it on the Insta story today, but that's all good.
It definitely worked, because round 2, first ever Adelaide Oval showdown, and our first year at the ground for home games, you were having that slick back look, showdown medalist. How was that day for you as well? Yeah,
that was at a time where I think everything was just sort of clicking for me from a personal level. Like, in terms of my footy, had a great pre-season, and there was that continuity that I was referring to earlier, and sort of started off, I think round 1, I played okay as well. And then, sort of playing through the midfield and full of confidence. And then I think I snuck forward sort of later in the game and kicked the goal as well. And I think on that particular day, the medal probably could have gone between maybe 2 or 3 different players. And luckily enough, I was on the receiving end of that day. And I remember going out and celebrating pretty hard that night as well. So,
yes, that's what we love to hear. And that final series was incredible. Like the first one, in the prison bars, Adelaide Oval, then the trip to Perth, and then just falling short against Hawthorn. What do you remember from that whole final series? Because for us, it was an amazing time.
Yeah, look, there's lots of vivid memories that spring to mind from those particular games. Obviously, the Richmond game, just how unbelievably well we played in that first quarter. It was just remarkable. It just seemed that everything that we were doing was coming off. Boys were taking the game on, being super brave, but also executing our skills at a great level, and we couldn't miss in front of goal. So that was just an unbelievable, probably one of the best quarters of football that I've ever been involved in. That one and the first quarter of the Hawthorn game, I reckon it was the following year.
Yeah.
Similar sort of thing, like 7 or 8 goals in the first quarter and just unbelievable football being played. And then, the Freo game was a really fond memory of mine as well. It's always really hard to win over there, no matter where you're playing. And they were a really good team at that point in time. Again, we were struggling at halftime, and then I think there was a quote that came out from either Kenny or Phil Walsh at the time that said, something about if you're going to build the car, you may as well crash it, or something along those lines. And it was basically a metaphor for playing super aggressive and attacking footy the way we played all year, rather than the defensive style that we had been playing in the first half.
Yeah.
And we came out after half time. I think Robbie kicked 4 goals in the third quarter of that game. Ollie had 25 and kicked 2 or 3 in a semi-final as a 19-year-old. That was one of very few AFL games that I had more than 30 disposals. I think I had 32 that game. So, from a personal level, really contributed quite well. And we were pretty keen to really sort of get quite emotional and pumped up about it when the siren went. But I remember a message coming out from Kenny with about a minute or two to go to all the players, and he sort of said, "Look, just keep a lid on things, like with the celebrations on field afterwards." And I think you see him coming out afterwards, and he's looking around at everyone, telling everyone to sort of calm down a little bit. But just because I think he knew that there was more of a job to do sort of next week, and and sort of hopefully beyond that. So unbelievable series. And obviously the Hawthorn game was it was an opportunity missed. I mean, I think we kicked 3 goals, 9 or something in the first quarter of that game, and we're really dominant and on top of Hawthorn, playing some great footy. Unfortunately, didn't make the most of our opportunities, and it came back to haunt us at the end of the game. So an amazing series, probably a highlight of my footballing career in terms of that 3-week period, I would say.
It was definitely a highlight for everyone, I think, fans-wise as well. There's one in particular moment against the Richmond at the Richmond game as well. I think it was the second quarter. You're running in. You've got Morris from the Tigers coming in against you. You spoke about that one-on-one with the Footy just before. You won this one. You got the handball to Schultz and kicked the goal. Yeah. How was that impact for you? But also, I think that's one of the most iconic clips for us as well. Just talk us through that.
Yeah, it tends to get played a little bit, that one, and it's definitely a moment that I'm very, very proud of, and often sort of gets spoken about and played, which is great. I feel, it sort of gives me goosebumps, I guess, every time I see it, having been a part of it. But that mainly stemmed from Westy actually not giving me the ball earlier up the ground. So we were pretty much running through the centre square together, and I thought I was in a pretty good position for him to be able to handball me the footy. Turns out he didn't, and he sort of floated one into the forward line, and I thought, he's burnt me here, so I'm going to have to go chase the next one. And turns out, the ball sort of bounced up in between Stevie Morris and I. And it's funny, so Stevie Morris, he was a former West Adelaide player before he got drafted to Richmond. And we at the footy club at Port Adelaide were pretty keen to try and get him as a Port player. didn't eventuate that way. Me and a couple of the other guys actually took him out for dinner, I think the year prior to that, to try and coerce him to come into Port Adelaide. And so, yeah, it's funny how sort of things work out. But, yeah, I was a bit pissed off at Westie that he didn't handle me the footy, so I had to go get the next one. And that's the way it all eventuated.
You made him look like a genius too. It looked an amazing bit of play too.
Yeah, it came off well. So, Schultze a walking goal, and I don't know who was commentating, but he gave me a bit of praise, which was nice.
Yeah, old Dennis. And then obviously, like the next few years were a bit tough, and then almost leaving the club. What was that whole period like for you? And then sort of staying, and then being like strong in your decision to stay.
Yeah, it's something I've reflected on a little bit, that little period. So probably end of 15 and 16, I think it was. That I'd had some offers from other clubs, from interstate, and the club and Port as a football club had sort of said, look, you're probably not feeling within yourself that you're getting the most out of your football abilities, and I guess they had sort of sensed that from their point of view as well. So maybe there's an opportunity for you to have a look around and see whether you might be of benefit going elsewhere. So I guess I took the liberty of doing that. I had a tour through a couple of facilities in Victoria. Certainly Richmond were really keen for a couple of years. Blair Hartley, their head recruiting manager at the time, was actually involved with Port Adelaide when I got drafted there. And we've got a good relationship, Blair and I. And so I think he was pretty keen to get me across to Richmond. But I think honestly at that point in time I was probably a bit immature. I probably didn't feel like I could possibly have moved away from home and made that big move into state at that point in time, especially when not knowing that I had the security of another few years at Port Adelaide. I think it was almost an easier decision for me just to say, nah, like I'm just going to stay. I didn't know how my footy was going to turn out, but I did have a conversation with the coaching staff at the end of 2016, I think it was, just to say, look, I think I'd be better off playing across half back, because from an aerobic point of view, I don't feel like I can keep up the game playing in the midfield, especially with the limited interchange cap. When it was unlimited, it was fine. I could just cruise around for a bit, come off when I was knackered, go back on, and there's no issues. But sort of got a bit more technical when the interchange cap came in. So, made that transition to the back line, and in 2017 was sort of reasonable, not too bad. But then 2018, the first 5 games of that year, I was playing I probably had my 5 most consistent games of footy in one block, and was playing really well. And then, unfortunately, did the knee at training sort of during the week. So, interesting period. But I guess ultimately I feel like I'm a pretty loyal guy, and just was, as I mentioned, probably a bit immature at that point in time to want to move into state.
Yeah, 100%. And I think to be honest, I think everyone was happier that you stayed as well. And I think I was cheering, that's for sure. But you mentioned the ACL 2018, that period of time. What was the mindset going through the rehab and trying to get back for 2019? Was it always, I'm going to come back and play the same footy, or did you shift a little bit?
No. Yeah, my mindset probably changed in a couple of different ways, to be honest. Like, I always had this sort of theory, I guess, growing up, that if you do the right thing, then you'll be sort of rewarded for it in a football sense. So I always thought that, by doing extras and training hard and eating well and doing all those types of things, that I'd be rewarded for it. And then obviously I suffered my knee injury, and my philosophy around that probably changed a little bit. Like I still did all those things, but I guess my mindset changed in terms of just sometimes shit things happen to good people, sort of thing. And I often reflect on like David Roden and the time that I spent with D-Rod early on in my career. And he was just like the nicest guy and best teammate you could ask for, and had fun and whatever. And then all these shitty things kept happening to him with his knees and stuff. And I sort of was like, oh, well, it is what it is, sort of thing. And so I probably took my footy a tad less seriously, still kept myself in good shape and trained hard and did all that sort of stuff. But it was probably more focused on, from then on, like just having a bit more fun around the place, socially as well, building better relationships with my teammates, and really just enjoying the fact that I could train and play when I came back. So that was mainly my mindset on returning. I felt like early on in my return to football, I was probably a better athlete than what I was before my knee. When you have those long-term injuries, you sort of focus a lot on, obviously your strength. And I felt like I was quite more of a powerful and explosive athlete when I first came back. And I think I've spoken to Kane Farrell on return from his knee, and he sort of said the same thing as well. And I spoke to Jake Piscini recently as well, who's recovering from an ACL injury. And I sort of said, mate, you'll be surprised at how much of a better athlete you actually come back as at the end of this. So, and then, I guess on return, so I actually would have come back in about 10 months from my ACL, but then I kept having issues with my hamstring where they took the graft from.
Yeah.
And so, that sort of kept me back for another couple of months. So I ended up being about 12 months between games. And first game back against Freo, I think I had 13 touches in my first quarter, and I thought, shit, how easy is this? Like, I'm not sure I sniffed it much after that, but that was a nice way to sort of get back in the swing of things. And I just wanted to be I think by the end of my career, I just wanted to be known as like a harder and tougher footballer than perhaps I was early on in my career. And I guess that's the player that I want to be known as coming back from my knee.
Bloody oath. I think you nailed that too. And the revitalisation of 2020, like Port minor premiers. How crazy was that to be a part of?
Yeah, it was an interesting year again, like with all the COVID stuff and going into hubs and those types of things. And I reflect on the way that we approached that whole process, and it was first class. Like the way Kenny and Chris Davies and Michael Voss just altered our mindsets and our approach going into that whole season was brilliant. We saw it as, if we approach this in the right way, we can actually and see it as more of a positive in terms of being able to build closer relationships with each other, spend time away with each other. We can make it really benefit us on field, and it certainly did that. We had some unbelievable people behind the scenes that were organising all sorts of stuff. Trent Henschel and lady by the name of Di Pouncett, who they're just the most organised and caring people, and just would do anything to help anyone else. So those guys. So the way we approached that whole situation was really good, and we were obviously minor premiers on the back of it.
Yeah, and I think that was, besides 2013, 2014 was a lot of fun. I think 2020 for a lot of Port fans as well in that situation would have been enjoying it as well. The hubs though, Hammer.
Yeah.
Obviously isolating with your teammates and everyone a part of the club. What was that like? And can you give us a bit of insight on who was an actual pest around the joint during that time? Because I reckon there would have been quite a few.
Pest. Look, firstly, I guess, as I mentioned, like we try to see it as an opportunity for us to try and bond together and maybe build some relationships that you wouldn't normally have built otherwise. We're at the Gold Coast, so it was nice weather, and it's not like we were super confined to our rooms. Like we're actually allowed to go outside. Boys were playing golf, sitting by the pool, and it certainly wasn't the worst place to isolate. That's for sure. So we took some benefit out of that. In terms of being a pest, there's a couple of boys that were always a pest back in those days. Certainly Stevie Motlop is just he's just always running around trying to do stupid things to have a laugh with people, and just he's a good man, Stevie. But there wasn't anyone that really sprang to mind in terms of being too much of a pest. I think the boys were all pretty good, got along well. So
that's good.
Not much for you there.
We can move into Big Brother, I reckon, Ant.
Ammo, it's time to go into Big Brother. We talk about a few stories about footy trips or people that you roomed with over the time for away trips and stuff like that. So I'm just going to kick it off. Away trips, who did you room with? And did they have anything quirky about them that just annoyed you?
I tended to room with Matt Broadbent, Brogsy, a fair bit when, particularly early on in our careers together. Brogsy can sleep anywhere at any time, which is a great quality and a quality that I don't have. But in terms of anything that was sort of annoyance that I disliked, we got along pretty well, Brogsy and I. So there's nothing that really springs to mind. I'm a bit boring with this sort of stuff. Like I often get asked this stuff, like who are the teammates that you dislike the most, or I don't really have any answers for any of it, but I'll see how I go. But Brogsy was usually the one that, on footy trips, underway trips, we knocked around a fair bit together.
It's good.
I think, and footy trips as well. I will ask who was the organizer during your time, because we've had. I think it was Nick Lower who organised it in the early days as such, but during your time, who organised the footy trips and what was something that was quite quirky?
I reckon it might have been maybe Matt Thomas that organised one or two of it, and him and Nicky Lower used to get along really well. I reckon Matty was the organiser of definitely one of our trips to Bali. And he organised sort of singlets and all that sort of stuff for us. And, there's always the one or two boys that sort of come off the scooters and all that sort of stuff, but never manages to make them the media, which is nice. I remember being on the back of a scooter with Callum Hay. I don't know if you boys remember Callum Hay.
No, I do. Yep.
He was a maniac. And I was on the back of a scooter with him one day, and I think we were going down to Jimbaran Bay for a nice feed on the beach. And we were going down one of these highways. There was cars and bloody traffic and shit everywhere. And he was weaving in and out of all this traffic. I'm on the back of his scooter. He's trying to do jumps up all the curbs and stuff, and fuck, it was just out of control. I thought my life was going to end on that night, but we managed to get there and back safely. I think I had a few pretty stern words to him. I said, mate, like,
what are you doing? Yeah. He's a big boy too, Cal. So that
he is now. Yeah. Very funny guy too. Very funny man. So, so there's a few stories that sort of come out of those footy trips. Lots that sort of got to remain tight-lipped about.
No, fair play.
No, we're right. Respect the footy trips. Huddo, I think we go into random port match next.
Yes. Yep.
Absolutely. So, Hammer, we got a segment where we do random port merch, anything that's lying around the house that is obscure, or anything that holds something that's pretty close to your heart. And I reckon Huddo's got something that's so fantastic. He's pumped it up all day in our text messages.
Oh, you are. So I picked this out, actually. I only found it about 5 minutes before I got home. An old DVD, because we love the name of game stuff. Old game. So it was round 12 against North Melbourne, where Paulie Stewart kicked that goal, and
how good
that was my 17th birthday that go, and I went nuts.
So I had the footy in my hand when the final siren.
That's right.
Yeah, that was an unbelievable game. Far out.
Oh,
that was just. I think Schultz kicked 7 or 8. Stewie sort of took that mark running back and then dodged and unbelievable. And that was grim, like grim times. 2012, like barely win the game. 12,000 at Amy Stadium. Half the crowd had left by that point in time. It was unbelievable.
I remember screaming, "Why was he playing on?"
Yeah.
A bloke right behind him, but amazing result. But
yeah.
All right, Hammer, what have you got?
Random port merch. I've got a little bit here. I just had to raid the closet just prior to coming on. So I'll start with this this port cap.
That is gorgeous.
I think I found that at an op shop somewhere. It's been signed by a couple of players. Actually, you know what? I reckon I got this from just a random young supporter that gave it to me at like a signing session. It's actually been signed by Matt Loby and Aaron Young, which is random. The hat's about 50 years old.
That's hot.
Anyway, we got the infamous
gorgeous
rim. So that one was obviously as a result. You might have heard the story of. I saw it in the back of someone's car. It was
that's right.
Dash. I chased him into Bunnings and we made an exchange. And so that's that one. This is a random Port Adelaide Magpies. It's a visor.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's still look how dirty and disgusting it all is. I found this in a car park. In the car park at Alberton, I think, as I was walking out of one of my games.
What was on the ground?
It was just on the ground in the car park. So it obviously belongs to a diehard, avid Port Adelaide Magpies supporter from who knows how long ago, but that was a nice little find. I've got the.
Oh my God,
that's sensational!
It's a second branded Port Power rugby top.
That is
so.
Wow.
That's a nice little acquisition, that one.
Mm-hmm.
And last but not least, is this Port Adelaide bomber jacket.
Oh,
look at that.
So, and on the back it's got Port Adelaide Power. So yeah, bit big that one, but extra large. But no, that's a ripper as well. So that's found in an op shop, that one, from a mate of mine. So,
bloody hell!
Got a nice little collection there.
Used to see them all the time at Footy Park. Those bomber jackets. People used to wear them all the time. Oh,
hello.
There you go.
It's dinner time for the dog.
Oh, look at it!
Oh, bloody hell! Ant-Man, what have you found?
Oh, it's not as good as Hammer's, and it's probably better than yours, but it's the 2013 season guide. And I think, if I've got this right, is that photo Hammer was talking about.
Yes, that's the one.
That's the one.
Yeah, correct.
I'll never forget that.
So he's about to take off.
Get the 14,550 back, as Rowie said, I think.
Yeah. No, it was a remarkable day.
That's sensational.
Bloody
all right.
hell.
Hammer, Huddo, it's time for quick fire questions. And if you thought getting scrutinised by the media was hard enough, wait till Huddo scrutinises you for a certain question at the end, Hammer. But we'll get straight into it. What's your favourite TV show?
At the moment?
Yeah.
Love Island UK.
Oh, Jesus.
That is the best of the lot already.
Love Island UK. And I'll tell you why, because often from Monday to Thursday, I don't actually get home until about 9 o'clock after training and work and that sort of stuff. So me and the missus, we cuddle up in bed, we watch 1 or 2 episodes of Love Island and then we go to sleep, generally.
Holy shit. Oh, that's a start.
I think I would just end it there. But favourite Simpsons character?
Oh, favourite Simpsons character? I guess Bart. Yeah, Bart Simpson, yeah.
Go-to karaoke song?
3 a.m. by Matchbox 20.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, certainly vocalised that a few times after a pre-season trip up to Noosa 1 year, a few years back.
Love that.
Me and a few of the boys got caught up at the Surf Lifesaving Club on a two or three consecutive evenings, and I sang that song every single time. So, yeah.
Hopefully it improved overnight. Oh, it's terrific.
Your favourite flavoured potato chip?
I'm going to go with the Mexicana flavored Doritos.
Holy
great
shit. That's
That is. I like that.
I don't eat chips very often, but that's definitely one that springs to mind. Yeah.
Not
Done
bad.
deal. Your go-to Mario Kart character?
Wario.
Oh.
Wario.
Yeah.
I love this. And I'm actually scared now because these are throwing me left field. But the most important question, Hammer, what is your favourite shaped flavour?
My favourite shaped flavour or
shaped flavour.
Favourite shapes flavour. Again, don't eat shapes very regularly, but I think I'm just a barbecue man.
Simple. That's how we do it. We are.
What are yours?
Chicken crimpy.
Chicken crimpy. Yeah, that was up there. Yeah. And
All right.
what about cheese and bacon? Cheese and bacon flies under the radar a bit too. Yeah.
Ooh.
That's top three.
Top three. Yeah.
Yeah, I rate top three, I think. But that's not. I rate that.
I'm still getting over the Love Island one being the most controversial out of the lots.
It's an open book here, boys. Whatever.
That's good. That's what we like. That's what we like.
Too hot to handle as well.
That's a great show.
Yeah, no. Dead set. That is a fantastic show, and you won't change my mind.
Oh, you blokes.
Love is love, mate.
Yeah.
Let's go into obscure Port Adelaide players that have played for Port Adelaide under 100 games over the years that deserve some love. And Huddo, you kick us off again.
It's always me. It's always me. Yeah, right. So we've got brothers. We've had Marlon, Motlop. We've had the Motlops. We've had the Corns brothers. We've had the Burgoynes. But boy out in Tanunda, very big, tall, key defender. He played 6 games for Port Adelaide. A total of 5 goals and 6 behinds. Matthew Westhoff.
That is obscure.
Yep, we're in number 40. So it's just 39 and then 40. And yeah, there you go. So Matt Westhoff's my obscure player. There you go, Ant.
Hammer?
I'm going to go with a good mate of mine. Bit of a club favourite for his short tenure at the club. Kane Mitchell.
Danger.
Yes. Kane. Danger.
Just one of
Never
the great
forget.
men. Recently became a father to a beautiful young girl.
Yes.
Just an absolute legend. Went to his wedding a few years ago. Just such a good guy. We're actually our first game for the AFLW season's over in Perth in a couple of weeks' time. So I'll be catching up with a great man over there. So Kane Mitchell is my obscure player.
Well, put in a good word for us, will you, Hammer?
Absolutely. Yeah, no doubt.
He probably got inspired by your Bob haircut when he cut his hair short.
I think Kenny might have put the hard word on him to say you ain't getting a game until you cut your hair, sort of thing. So
came back and tagged Trent Cotchin, I think it was, in that wet night against Richmond.
Yeah, no, he did too. Yeah, he did it very well too.
Yeah, he did. I'm going to go with someone that was drafted with Hammer. It was a good year. We had Matthew Broadbent, Jackson Trengove. I think Jason Davenport was in that draft pool as well.
I'm going to guess it's going to be 1 or 2 players. Can I guess them?
Yeah, go on.
I'm going to say it's either Mitch Banner or Jared Redden.
Well, it was actually Glenn Dawson.
Oh, the Cougar!
The Cougar!
Yeah, 0 games, 0 goals, and was in that draft pool.
He was rookie listed though, so that doesn't count.
No, he was still on the list.
No.
The Cougar.
That's what I want to get at the bottom of that. Where'd the Cougar come from?
Glenn Cougar Dawson. There might have been a.
Oh no! Oh no!
There might have been a story behind that one. Long time ago. About bloody 12, 13 years ago, maybe longer. So, yeah, can't quite recall, but use your imagination, I'd say.
Yeah,
yeah. We'll take your word for it, Hammer.
Yeah, thanks, Hammer. We definitely can picture that. All right, let's go from Glenn Cougar Dawson to another bloke that deserves some love, and it's simply our favourite man. We talk about Stephen Salopek in a segment called Better Call Sal.
And Salopek finishes it.
Hammer's going to tell us a story about Stephen Salopek.
Better Call Sal. Sal, again, like super talented, as you guys are aware of, I'm sure. Riddled with some really bad injuries with his shoulders and Achilles and those types of things. So probably didn't get as much as he probably thought he was going to out of his AFL career due to circumstances out of his control. But he was an elite trainer. He always used to say a phrase, the fit get fitter. And it was generally in reference to whenever we had like a running session, often if you were like super fit like Sal was, you had to run either more or at a higher intensity or more reps or, you know, all that sort of stuff. Whereas the guys that were not so fit or aerobically gifted often got away with doing a bit less. So that was one of his common quotes was the fit get fitter. And I remember there was a point in time where I think Sal was there was consideration for him getting traded as well. I can't recall what year it was exactly, but I remember flicking him a message, and I was pretty early in my career, but just saying like how valued he is as a player, particularly amongst the younger guys who. Yeah, at that point in time in football, there was still generally a bit of a hierarchy between the older and senior players and the younger guys that were just coming in and finding their way. It was there was still a little bit of that sort of stuff going on, but Sal was always very open and welcoming and respectful and would do anything he could to help the younger guys. So I remember flicking him a message just saying, mate, like, would love to have you around, like love being your teammate and that sort of stuff. And thankfully he stayed for another couple of years, but no, he's a good man. He's a good man, Steve.
Yeah. Love Sal. Very excited. Next week he's on the pod joining us and he gets to give his side of all the other Better Call Sal stories that we've had. So there's been some good ones, but yeah, another good one there, Ant.
Oh, very good, very good. Hammer, before we touch up, mate, I just want to ask, and I think Mum wanted me to ask this one, so I thought I'd do it. Obviously, we've talked about styles over the years, the hairdos, the fashion, the Cleo Bachelor, and then the tattoos. Mum calls it sex appeal. Yeah. So I just wanted to ask, like, tattoos over the course of the years have just become a collection thing, or?
Yeah, I think initially it was probably for that purpose that your mum mentioned. When I was sort of a younger sort of whippersnapper, sort of early 20s, and thinking like, sort of AFL in the AFL system, and wouldn't mind just making the most of that, I guess, opportunity. And so that was certainly the idea initially, and then I've got a bit of a somewhat of like an OCD type issue where if I get, say if I had my left arm done, then I would need to get my right arm done. If I had my left side done, I would need to get my right side. So then it just became a bit of like I needed to level myself out sort of thing. At the moment, I'm all level. Whether I get any more, I'm not too sure. It's an expensive hobby. And it's a painful hobby. But yeah, the temptation is definitely there. So I think in time it's just become more of a collection type thing. And my tattoo artist is a legend, and so a bit of fun.
How do you go handling them, like when they're getting done and afterwards? How's the pain?
Depends where it is. So often, like the ones on the arms are not too bad. Down around the wrists, not much fun. Anywhere where there's just minimal skin and then it's straight onto your bone. So all the ones in and around my ribs were pretty nightmarish, to be honest. I tended to use like a numbing cream, which would last for maybe an hour or two, and then for the last few hours you'd be sitting there writhing in pain. But yeah, it's pretty draining. It's a pretty draining process, but yeah, sort of don't mind them. Don't mind the look of them. My missus is happy for me to not ever have another one done, but
Oh, that's brilliant. And the last question I've started to ask Hammer, like you always hear, who's your hardest opponent and all that. Honestly, Hammer, who was your easiest opponent you ever played on?
The easiest opponent I ever played on. Wow, that is one that I've not really thought of too often. I think not necessarily opponents, but like when like GWS came into the competition for the first year or two, you used to sort of lick your lips a little bit when you played against them. Sort of roam around with a bit more freedom, knowing that they weren't going to, hurt you too much or put up much of a fight. So there were some pretty enjoyable games in the early years against GWS, but there's not really any bad players that play in the AFL these days. So yeah, it's not an easy game.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Well, Nick Lower said Troy Chatwood, so that was
Ooh, ouch. I like it.
Good classic stitch-up.
To be fair, Alapado Carlisle said Eddie Betts and Dustin Martin.
Yeah, he did too.
Right.
Oh, yeah, brilliant. But honestly, Hammer, thank you so much, mate. Like, we're both huge fans of yours, and it was obviously a privilege to watch you play, mate. And thank you for the apology for the missus. She's very much going to enjoy that.
No, you're welcome. My bad for booting a bloody screwy into her face. I shouldn't have done it in the first place.
Absolute shank too.
Yeah, no doubt. No, thanks for having me on, boys. Appreciate it.
All right, mate. Thank you very much.
Cheers.